Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome to Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into SST on Apple Podcasts, app, Spotify, and now on YouTube. Joining me as he does all football season long and elsewhere throughout the year, Pat Boyle. I almost wanted to call you Patrick there for a second. Patrick Boyle, how are you today, my friend?
I'm good, Peter. Well, you go with the long first name. You go with your full first birth certificate name. So I guess you wanted to spread the love on to me. But, Pete, we're 3 weeks in, and if you bet every underdog and if you bet every under, you're a rich man right now. So what does that tell you right now about the NFL?
Now, we're all idiots. We know nothing. I'm currently watching Game of Thrones for the first time, and already 2 Game of Thrones things popped into my head. When you said Peter, I thought of Peter Baelish, Mr. Littlefinger. And I just wanted to say, you know nothing, Jon Snow. And
well, wait a minute. Are you watching? You're watching Game of Thrones for the first time, or the House of Dragons?
No, I'm watching the Game of Thrones, OG, first time. I'm a first timer out here.
Wow, where were you the last 7 years?
So, it's a very weird thing that happens in my brain where I was very confident that I would like it, but I was a little bit late to get going. So I kind of missed that early rush of catching up for the season that was going on, whatever. And I knew I would like it. And my sleep schedule is pretty bad already, So when I add something like that I knew I would like, my sleep schedule is just a nightmare, So I pushed it off for a while. And then finally with House of the Dragon coming around, and I was like, you know what? I got to just do this. So here I am, I'm mid-season 5 currently. We're making moves. And, I'm hoping to catch up to House of Dragon basically by the time it ends this first season. I'll probably be around then, give or take.
Well, I'll tell you this. Game of Thrones only goes downhill from where you're at. So.
Oh, I've heard. And you know what? I think I have the benefit of knowing that. Some stuff I knew happened just from being a human and being on the internet and hearing people talk. I know even a couple things that are going to happen that haven't happened yet where I'm at in season 5. And the fact that I know it's going downhill, I think will help me have low expectations and possibly enjoy it better. It's kind of like going in to a Giants-Cowboys game on a Monday night, not expecting any touchdowns. Because then when you get 2 touchdowns for the whole game, you're like, wow, what a great show we just watched, right? So it's kind of like that concept. Every time I tell people, oh, I'm watching it for the first time, I either get, oh my God, it's so great, you're going to just love it, just enjoy it, yada, yada. Or it's like, oh, well, it gets really shitty in the 5th, 6th, and 7th season. I know. I lived through it. I heard everyone complain. I don't want to hear it again. Listen, it is what it is.
All right, maybe I'll just go fuck myself then.
Yeah, no, it's not directed at you. That sounded like it was directed at you, and maybe it should have been, but it wasn't.
I'm probably the 30th person to tell you that, so I get it.
Yes, and you're in a tough spot here, and I'm now projecting on you, and really, my friend Alec Argento, who's a frequent guest on this podcast, he said it with the most snark, and I still hold it. I still have a little piece in my heart that's mad at him because he was like, "Oh, well, it gets shitty in 7-7," and I'm like, "I don't care, bro. I'm enjoying it. Let me have it."
You can project on me all you want. That's fine.
Well, we're gonna try to project on some other things with the NFL. So let me tell you the plan here for a second. We're gonna recap our picks as we do every week. Nice week for the boys. Mark Shenlugan and yours truly, Pete Kennedy, with winning weeks. Pat with 2 and 3. We'll go through the picks in a moment. After that, we will play a little game where we talk about teams that save their seasons and then teams that need saving, right? Some of the teams that in week 3 had that performance that might have flipped the script for them, and some teams that looking forward have some big holes they need to figure out. And lastly, we'll preview week 4. Week 4 already. Can you believe it? And we're back.
Every week now we're gonna say that. We're gonna queue up Francesa. You should honestly get that as a drop.
I could probably find it somewhere.
I know if you go through the Funhouse Twitter, he has all of his Francesa stuff archived. And he tweets that I think every year at some point in the season.
I gotta get that. That'll be a good add to the button machine over here. So Pat, let's get into it. And as we normally do, I will do the little recap for our boy Mark Shenlugan here, who in his eyes, and he's not here to defend himself, so I only kind of feel bad saying this. In his eyes, he should be 15-0. He should be 15-0. He hasn't made a bad pick the entire year. Yet he is sitting currently at 6-9. So it's not a bad record. It's a totally manageable record. He just came off 3-2. And to put words in his mouth why he's not here to defend himself again, I could have sworn he said on the podcast last week, this is the perfect fixed spot. This has got to be a fixed spot. This is a trap spot with the Chiefs money line. However, he still put the Chiefs money line in a money line parlay. Chiefs money line, Bengals money line, one leg hit. Chiefs did not. That's a miss. However, he did go Jamar Chase anytime touchdown. That hit at plus 110. That's a nice little pull for him on the player prop. Vikings plus 3.5 and Rams money line. Boy, did the Vikings make that interesting. I don't know how the hell they won that. I had some side action on them, of course, even though they weren't one of my picks. And the Rams took care of business for the most part. At the same token as the Chiefs, the Bills money line and the Buccaneers plus 7.5. He hit on the Buccaneers, not on the Bills. Lastly, the NFC East special, I should say. Eagles money line, Cowboys plus 7.5. That was a hit. So 3-2, a money line for the Bills and a money line for the Chiefs away from a 5-0. I know I was giving Mark some crap before about him saying he should have won every pick and Shenlugan versus kickers going on for the first 3 weeks of the season. But Pat, when you look at Mark's pick here or picks here, those 2 losses with the Bills and Chiefs, you chalked it up to NFL is an any given Sunday league, or do you think there was some sort of mishap with, trusting the favorites too much?
No, I think they were pretty good bets, honestly. And I think Mark Shenlugian versus the kickers of the NFL is a legitimate he's got a legitimate case to win a lawsuit there. You just look at the way that McDermott and Andy Reid coached those games, managed those games down the stretch. It was very poorly done. It was very poorly done, to say the least. Buffalo, and again, can you blame Andy Reid for not trusting Matt Amendola after he blows an extra point and then blows a chip shot field goal? Not necessarily, but they had one case where they had it would have been like another 40-yard field goal before he missed the chip shot one, and they line up Townsend as the kicker and they go fake field goal and they try to go for it. What would have been a 33-yarder? He missed the 33-yarder. The previous drive would have been a 41-yarder, and they had Townsend go fake field goal and it blew up in their face. If they just took the easy points, and again, I know Amendola missed an extra point. He then ended up blowing that chip shot field goal the next drive. If they kicked the 41-yarder, would he have missed that too? Who knows? But the fact that they had so many points that they left on the table, and then the same thing with the Bills. So many opportunities to win that game. Bass misses a chip shot field goal, but a couple of times when they went for it instead of taking the points, you trust your defense, it would have ended up working out. So, yeah, Mark's got a legitimate gripe there. So do I with the Chiefs money line. But, yeah, like you said, it's any given Sunday, man. You let the underdog hang around long enough, and you leave the door open long enough for any team, they're going to burn you.
Yeah, and that's really what it is, right? And if you think about that Bills game and the Chiefs game for that matter, it's the type of thing that looking forward, if those teams played again, which the Bills and Dolphins will, the Bills will be favorite and they should be favorite. They probably should have won that game. They ran 90 plays on offense. It's ridiculous. They had a chance at the very end to make it happen. They just didn't finish the deal. They were down in Miami in that heat. Listen, it happens. That happens in Miami every year to somebody. So Mark has a gripe, as much as I wanted to make fun of him for saying he should have won every bet. And the kickers, man, I don't know what's going to happen with these kickers, because if he loses another bet on a kicker, I think we might have to take a ride over to his house, Pat, make sure he's okay.
Well, dude, the Bills game too, you mentioned they ran 90 plays. Dolphins ran 39. They outgained them 497 yards to 212, more than double the amount of first downs, almost triple the amount of yards on the ground. Dude, the fact that they lost that game is a travesty. An absolute travesty. And then I don't know if you saw one of the viral videos, one of the scumbag Dolphins fan parading through the Hard Rock Stadium after going up to every single Bills fan saying, "Enjoy that ride home," and cursing at him. Dude, oh my God, I never wanted to punch somebody on the internet more in my life than that. But yeah, it's it goes to every single week. There's games that inevitably come down to literally the final play or two. Against all odds, it always happens.
Yeah, facts. Why don't you go through some of your picks there, Pat?
Yeah, the same thing. Chiefs money line, Bengals money line. Me and Mark had the same exact pick, and you knew right there. It was like when everybody picks the same team on Sunday Night Football, go the other way. Me and Mark both had Chiefs and Bengals, and the line kept moving in the Colts' favor. We all saying, how is this possible? We knew Colts were going to be in desperation mode, but I said they have way too many problems. And sure enough, the Chiefs just let so many opportunities slip through their hands. So there was that. I'm so pissed at myself that I didn't just take the Ravens straight up -3 like you did. And even then, I said there's no way that the Patriots score at most 27 points. They scored 26, but then the Ravens blew them out, which I was like, I'm confident the Ravens win anyway. So that's one where I took them +3.5 and the under, and I got burned on the total rather than just taking them, with the points. Lions +10.5 and Rams +3.5. I love that bet. That Lions should have won that game. Luckily for you, with your side action, the Vikings came back and pulled it out. But I love that bet, and then I love the Packers +7.5 and under 47.5. So for the most part, I feel like I should have been 4-1. The one pick I did have, which was totally wrong, was backing Carson Wentz. That was just a terrible, terrible game played by them. I think when they play Philly again in Philadelphia, they're going to give you a much better battle. But that spread, even if I took this spread straight up too, they would have got hammered. I mean, it was just a terrible, terrible performance, and then they couldn't get anything going. And even then, Philly let them hang around. And the first couple of drives, it was just 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Then they fumbled. And even then, they had a chance to come back down 24-0. They could have gotten on the board before they turned it over on downs. Then they get a safety. Then they drive all the way down the field again and turn it over on downs. So it's just a debacle for them, just a terrible game. I'm still not sold. I'm sold on Philly winning the NFC East. I'm still not sold on them being a Super Bowl favorite. I still think, they're just really off to a hot start right now. But for the time being, that was just a terrible pick. Commanders +11.5 in the over.
Yeah, and sometimes you're on the wrong side. Sometimes you're just not making the right choice. Maybe you try to fade the public a little bit. You try to fade the hot team just to be a little bit different. You have to do that to keep yourself honest, to keep the league honest, to keep the public honest. So you can't beat yourself up over that one. On the Chiefs money line, you already explained it. The Ravens +3.5 and under 51.5 teaser is where I want to discuss a little bit here, Pat, and we'll flesh this out a little bit. We talked before that the pod was saying, let's think about the process here, because you're considering something that we've kind of been saying not to do, in the sense of we've been saying trust the process, to find what you like to do and keep doing it, try to find those similar spots and etc. But you are considering to maybe not go away full time from the same game teaser, but to steer away a little bit. So let me hear your thought process on, what's frustrating you with that setup and what, where it's come from.
Yeah, I think it's when I'm as confident as I was in a team like Baltimore, don't even mess around with the total. Don't even mess around, because how many, like we said, unders and the underdogs have crushed it so far. And the couple of picks I lost, you got an under that doesn't hit, and you had an underdog at home, a 6.5-point underdog that doesn't cover. So, I was going with the trends to start the season. It didn't work out. But yeah, no more so just when I'm confident that a team is going to win, especially in a small spread like that, 3, how many times, and there was a lot of games that I guess end in a 2-point game or a 1-point game, but for the most part, you get a team at -2.5 or -3. If you think they're going to win, just take the spread, right? There's no point, there's no way that you're, I think, ever going to logically convince yourself this team's +2.5. I don't think they win, but yeah, I could see them losing by 1 or 2. It's just, there's no point in doing that. So why do the opposite with the Ravens? And, again, any given Sunday you can have, it's not even just about the offense. It's about if there's turnovers, there was 6 turnovers in that game, that gives teams short fields to start with. That's how you get an over in a game where, you have an offense like New England that isn't that good. But if you get good special teams returns, turnovers, just short fields to begin with, that's how you hit overs when they shouldn't hit. So, yeah, I think going forward, if I'm as confident in a side and a team that's going to win, like I was with Baltimore, I'm not even going to mess around with the total. I'm just going to take them with the points.
It makes sense to me. And that's kind of where I came to on this slate this week, right? There was so many 6-point spreads, and, doing the 6-point spread down to money line, doing the money line parlay thing, or getting that teaser down to a money line. And then you have to now pick an over under, even if you don't feel particularly confident in it, you talk yourself into something, but you felt good about the side in the first place. Why not just go for it? And that's kind of what I did. And I've talked about this in the past too. And I think Matt asked Arthur the Caesar when you and I did a little interview with him last year, about teasing through 0. And that's something else too, right? You were 100% right that if the Ravens were going to lose that game, it was going to be by less than 3. You were 100% right. But the value that you got wasn't equal to how right you were. Like the Patriots only were going to win by 3 if they did somehow figure out a way. But it just didn't make the difference in your pick there. And that doesn't mean, from my opinion at least, I don't know what you're planning on doing. I don't think you should stay away from them forever. I think you just need to say, oh, I like this total already. I like this side already. Instead of saying, oh, I like this side, let me find a total that works too, So I don't know. I'd like to see where you're going. And just like Mark had some gripes, you have some serious gripes here too. Like you easily could have been 3-2, 4-1 this week. We could have said that about weeks in the past as well. So we're knocking at the door. And I got to 4-1 this week. And I feel like in part it was because I kept it simple. I didn't go for a bunch of teasers and stuff like that. The only teaser I did, I actually felt really good about. And honestly, I probably would have went straight on both of those teams as well. So I kind of copped out by going Panthers plus 8.5 and Cowboys plus 8. But it happened to work in this case. So I don't know. Teasers are still going to be very much a part of your bets, I'm sure of it, and my bets as well. But I guess it's just picking those spots and not forcing yourself to get a total if it's not something that you loved in the first place,
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been looking at the slate for week 4. I think there's a lot of good spreads to attack. So, I think this is coupled with the fact that I've burned myself by, not going with my gut and not going with a side and trying to get that insurance with the total. Coupled with the fact that there's a lot of spreads, a lot of tight spreads, a lot of 2s, a lot of 3s, a lot of 3.5s that I like. You might see, I think you're going to see a change in approach here.
Good. And that's okay. That's good because then when you change, you can't change back, right? Like you got to almost pick your side. And it's weird because we're criticizing the Ravens pick, but we're not giving credit to the Packers and the under, which also was a smash hit. But however, the Packers won straight up. Actually, did they cover the regular spread? Yeah, they did, right?
Yeah, they won. Yeah, they were plus. They were 2-point underdogs, and they won by 2.
So they covered their regular spread and the regular under hit. So you were right 100%, but perhaps not necessary. So that's interesting. So I went Raiders -2. Ironically, the only pick that I posted of myself, the whole video, is the one that I got wrong. I saw some friends tonight. They were like, Raiders -2, man. I'm like, yeah, but all the other ones were right. So it's just funny how that works out. So I was 0-1 to start with the Raiders, but thankfully hit on the Ravens -3. Falcons made it a little ugly, but won on the pick 'em at the Seahawks, which I felt pretty good about. The Panthers plus 8.5, Cowboys plus 8. I actually tried to middle on Monday night, not going to lie. A little bit of my Giants fan came out. I already had a good Sunday. I said, screw it. Let's go Giants money line and keep my Cowboys plus 8. Maybe I'll middle it. So that kind of ended up being a wash in real life, but it still was a winning week for me. And Jaguars plus 3.5. I got the bad number there, Pat. I got the worst number because Herbert was announced to play. The line shot up to 6.5. I was texting you guys, and I'm like, yo, I'm still hitting this. I tweeted it out too. Why was Herbert playing late in that game? We're going to get into the Chargers for sure. But quickly, it was mind-boggling to me he was playing at the end of that game. I thought the Jaguars would keep it close. For as great as Herbert is, they don't seem to blow people out very often. So I loved getting it at 6.5. I even liked it at 3.5. I actually won that bet twice because I doubled down. So that was a nice little week there. So there's the picks recap. Pat, any last words on the pick recap before we move on?
Yeah, just really quick, what you mentioned with Herbert, and we'll talk about this game more in depth, but, in the press conference, they asked him, like, why were you still playing? He goes, I just didn't want to quit on this team. And you got to appreciate that. You got to love the heart and the hustle. But Brandon Staley's got to be smarter, man. I mean, he keeps building a reputation for himself as a guy that just isn't a smart head coach. And that was the reason why I doubted him in the beginning of the year. And it's, things like this, playing your quarterback when you're already down by 3 scores for most of this, 2 scores for most of the second half, 3 scores for most of the fourth quarter. There was no need for him to be in that game.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And we're going to get into a bunch of teams that kind of save themselves a little bit here, and then some teams that need savings. The Chargers might come up. But I was listening to Damian Woody talk about coaches and the different coaches he has. Obviously, he's played for Belichick. He's played on some weird positions in Detroit with not some great coaching situations. Played for Rex Ryan in his first year as a coach. Different situation because he's like a football lifer or whatever. But he was talking about it. The difference between a veteran coach, especially one like Bill Belichick, versus a young guy. And the main thing he was saying is just it's management. It's not even about coaching. And I don't think anybody questions the X's and O's of Brandon Staley. That's not what people are questioning. It's really the purpose that he gives the team, right? Like when I think about a head coach, you have to give your team purpose every day, right? Like I don't know what they do, obviously, day to day in practice, but to me, they're amazing on third and fourth down, and they're not good on first and second down. And they need to flip that. It's been talked about by some of these smart analytics people for 2 years now. It's literally been 2 years of a track record. Yeah, Herbert, awesome. Third down, fourth down. He saves the day again, saves the day again. Let's get some more aggression on first and second down and stop getting to third down. The best teams have good third down conversion rates, of course, but they avoid third down as much as possible. And I just don't see that. So what is the purpose that Brandon Staley brings to the Chargers? He might draw up beautiful game plans. He might have a great defensive scheme, but when there's no driving force pushing a team to accomplish certain goals within drives, within games, that's when it gets frisky. That's when superstar talent can win games for you, but it's not with confidence and it's not blowouts against teams that they should beat handedly. So we'll talk about the Chargers in a minute. Pat, let's do first, though. Let's do teams that saved their season on Sunday or Monday or Thursday or whatever it may be for week 3, because there's a couple teams that needed that first win, couple teams that needed to make sure they put together a good performance against lesser opponents, and they did just that. So why don't you kick us off with one of the teams that saved themselves there in week 3?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, the team that saved their season was obviously the Cincinnati Bengals, right? And we were saying this was the get-right spot. This was desperation mode, going up against the Jets, going up against Joe Flacco. We knew all the problems that they had offensively with the offensive line going into that. But that was one of the reasons why they were my most confident pick, them and the Chiefs, was because the Jets pass rush, one, wasn't that good. Two, they've been basically notorious now for being a very undisciplined team over the last couple of years. And I just don't trust in Joe Flacco. And I said that Jets team should have been 0-2, if not for the miracle comeback against the Browns. And that's exactly the way it played out. Cincinnati defense stepped up. They came to play. They finally got it right on offense. They got the timing right. Burrow looked good throwing the ball. They were able to, even though he was, and Jamar Chase, once again, didn't have that big of a game, right? So, without Jamar having a huge game, it was still nice to see him, get Tyler Boyd involved, get T. Higgins involved. Those guys had a combined 198 yards. And the run game, which wasn't that strong, that's fine. I know you were talking about it. A lot of people were talking about it. Like, just let Burrow do his thing, right? Let Joe Burrow play his game. They dropped back. He threw 36 times, and he was super efficient. And when he gets protection, we know he's still one of the most dangerous quarterbacks. So I tweeted after week 2 that the Burrow magic has worn off. We'll see. Can he? I don't think he's going to have as magical of a season this year as he did last year. But against an opponent like the New York Jets, you need to flex your superiority. You need to come through. And I thought they did a great job of putting points on the board early, and they managed that game well. All in all, that was exactly the type of game they needed to save their season and get back on track. And I know we're going to preview week 4, Pete, but I'm letting you know now, I'm already going to be big time on the Bengals again Thursday at home. And I think it's because of the reasons we said with the Dolphins. Short week, playing in the 100-degree heat on Sunday. They played 90 snaps on defense. Tua, they say it's the back. I mean, we saw that video of him with the kind of deer legs. That was scary. So I don't know if he's going to be able to pass concussion protocol. I know the NFL launched an investigation, but he also does have some ankle soreness, they said. Who knows if that's, if there's truth to that. But I'm going to be big on the Bengals again. I think they get to 2-2, and I think that win against the Jets saved their season.
100%, man. And getting to 0-3 is tough. It's happened before. The Colts, right? Last year, you mentioned them starting 0-3 and making their way back. They should have made the playoffs last year. We all know what happened. So it's not like the Bengals would have been completely dead, but they really saved their chances here because the Ravens are freaking good, and they're going to win. They're going to win in probably 11 or 12 games this year. That's what it looks like for the Baltimore Ravens. And the Bengals, to make the playoffs, are going to have to win 10. Like, they have to get there. And if you go to 0-3, it gets harder and harder to do so. I'm still a little nervous with the Bengals offense, like just relying on those receivers to make big time plays, and Burrow trusts them, which is a beautiful thing to watch when they connect. But it's asking a lot. Like, it's asking a lot throughout a season. I remember last year with the Cardinals, I said it felt like everything that they did positive was spectacular, and spectacular is not sustainable. That's what drove me away from backing the Cardinals, even though they burned me regular season last year a bunch of times trying to bet against them. I tried to get ahead of it. I ended up being right in the long haul, but week to week, it didn't really matter. Relying on spectacular is really difficult. So the importance of getting Boyd and Higgins cooking is really huge because it can't just be bombs to chase. It has to be spread out. There's 3 guys who can make plays. Let's let them all make plays, you know? So I'm happy the Bengals did that because in reality, even if you're not a Bengals backer, which I've been anti-Bengals, I took the under on the season, you want to see them competitive. And all of a sudden they're 1-4 for some odd reason. You know, we're looking at a AFC North we thought was this strong division, and now the Ravens are running away and the Browns are the only team with a chance, right? And that's not what we want to see as NFL fans. So I'm happy they got their win. On the flip side is the Indianapolis Colts, who went against the Chiefs, and that'll be the team that I'm going to say saved their season a little bit because that's one that could unravel. You know, we're not expecting Joe Burrow and the Bengals to completely unravel, and we think their floor is pretty high. There was a universe where the Colts lost 0-3. All of a sudden, you know, they're struggling again. They play the Titans in division game this week. That's not a guaranteed win, even though they're favored by 3 right now. And they could be looking at 0-3, 0-4, 1-4, or something like that. And that's tough to come back from because the Jaguars are looking good. The Titans don't stink, and it is what it is. So they played a very weird game. They didn't look that good, but sometimes you need to just see the ball go in the basket, and that's what the Colts did against the Chiefs. Whatever they had to do, it was ugly. The Chiefs were ugly. The offensive line for the Colts is supposed to be this big strength. It hasn't been yet this season, but they irked one out. They did the job. Matt Ryan's still looking a little old, a little bit rusty, and I'm not saying that they're now going to go on a run, but God, if they lost that game, it wouldn't even really matter much moving forward because 2 0-3 starts in a row, I mean, it most likely would have ended up how it did last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'll hit on one other team here that saved their season, might only be temporary, and he might have only saved his job temporarily. But the Carolina Panthers, that was a game they had to win, right? They were another one of those desperation mode teams, 0-2 at home, and Christian McCaffrey did what Christian McCaffrey needed to do. They leaned on him for the run game, 25 for 108 yards. They were great for the most part on third down when they needed to be, 4 for 14, but they did have a couple of huge conversions in the first half that got them out to a 13-0 lead at the half. And then the defense was great in getting turnovers, those havoc plays, picking off Jameis, who I don't think is 100%. On the flip side, it's a Saints team that now I think is going to be in desperation mode at 1-2. Things kind of falling off the tracks for them. Kamara, I think, is still banged up. But for now, is Matt Rule going to make it through the season? Who knows? But temporarily, the Panthers saved their season with a huge win at home. Saints, started to make it close in the second half with a couple of touchdowns. At one point, 22-14, they had a chance to drive down the field late in the game, and Jameis throws a pick yet again on the first play of that last drive to seal it. So Carolina, that pass rush is going to have to get better. They got pressure, but they only ended up getting 1 sack. But they did get those 2 picks, the one to seal it. The pass rush needs to be better. The offensive line still needs to be better. Baker Mayfield needs to be better, if not for that one big breaker, Laviska Shenault. Again, they're not getting much in the passing game. But when you need a win to save your season, you got to get a win at home. The Panthers did that. So for now, they have saved their season. And for now, Matt Rule has saved his job.
Yeah, and it's the defense. 100% it's the defense. Baker's not going to be a 30-point-a-game quarterback who is just lighting people up and winning left and right because of how he plays on offense. Their defense right now ranks out as a top 10 defense in the league. They're 5 yards on average given up per play. That's tied for 10th in the NFL. It's not like the defense has been a disaster, but they had to put one together and line it up and make one happen. And the big play has to be there, right? Whether it's DJ Moore this week, it was Laviska Shenault who broke a big one. We know what McCaffrey can do. But if they can put it together on defense and then be, serviceable to a slightly above average on offense, they're a team that will be frisky, and I expect them to be. And if you think about their season so far, loss against the Giants, that was tight and silly. And then loss in week 1 against the Browns, that was very tight. So they're a team that is knocking at the door of winning a couple games, and I can see them, at least being competitive now through the season. If they lost that one to the Saints, you can fry them up as people start talking about Sam Darnold for some reason. I'm like, we don't need to be having that conversation.
And I think they have flown under the radar so far, right? 3 games that aren't pretty, not exciting to watch. They could be 3-0. They're 1-2. the big allure with this team right now is Baker's early start and Matt Rule. So, I'm very excited to watch how the Panthers, how their season kind of progresses here, and especially for them, in the immediate future. They've got a couple of tough games coming up where, again, I talk about Matt Rule, maybe be lucky to make it to Halloween, maybe extremely lucky to make it to Thanksgiving. They're at home against Arizona. That is going to be a toss-up to me. And I listened to one pod, where they're talking about how everybody's going to be big on Arizona. They were, I think it was a 3-point dog to start. Now they're plus 1.5. So the Panthers are actually favored in that game, which is surprising to me. But that's going to be very interesting Sunday in the late window. And then they play the Niners. They're at the Rams, home against the Bucks. So these next 4 games for them, man, are not easy by any stretch.
Definitely really tough. Thankfully, the Cardinals are giving up the most yards per play in the entire league right now. So their defense is getting worked. Like their defense is getting absolutely worked. Somehow they only give up 20 to the Rams this past week, but they're still just giving up chunk after chunk after chunk. So another chance for McCaffrey and Baker to show out a little bit and do something. I think I like the Panthers there as well. We could throw out the Falcons because they were 0-2. They got the win, but no one really expects the Falcons to be anything except for possibly in the chase for a top 5 draft pick. So not going to really care about them right now. I will maybe mention the Packers. I'll just throw them out. They weren't 0-2. They were 1-1. But that win was huge for them. The Buccaneers were 2-0. Their defense has been stellar so far this season. The Packers have to figure out. They might fit both categories here, Pat. If we're going to start segueing into the teams that need saving, the Packers kind of saved their season with a win, but it wasn't pretty. They still need to fill some holes. Those receivers, the offense in general needs to figure it out on the offensive line. But they had one of those wins that wasn't pretty by any means. It's not a Rodgers-Brady game that we would expect. It's not your father's Rodgers versus Brady game this past week, but that's the type of win they're probably going to have to pull out every couple weeks here when that offense faces up against a really good defense and Jones and Dillon don't get to run wild. They have to do some things. They didn't really do much, but they did just enough. And that defense, which has been a little bit weird this year, getting torched by the Vikings in week 1, now looking like the defense we expected. So the Packers might fit both categories here.
Yeah, for sure. I know, just to hit the other side too, I think, we look at teams that need their seasons to be saved. It's kind of tough to say that about a 2-1 team with Tom Brady, but the Buccaneers offense, I got a lot of concerns for them, man. They're going to get a shot in the arm with getting Evans back from suspension, but what is the status of Chris Godwin going forward here for the next several weeks? Coming off the torn ACL, doesn't look 100%. Julio Jones, I thought was going to be a huge addition to them, but obviously his knee is not 100%, and that's getting to a point where you got to try to save him for the season. They're going to probably use him on a pitch count going forward. You can't really afford to shoot your load with Julio Jones and then suffer a long-term injury for him. And then, they need these guys to step up. Rashad Perriman, Scotty Miller, they've been on the team for a couple of years now. They still have yet to really make a big impact consistently outside of that one overtime game winner that Rashad Perriman had last year. These are guys that need to step up. I know they're low on the depth chart, but, these injuries like this are things that are going to, I think, continue to happen for them. And then also in the run game, postseason Lenny, again, that's another guy. Is he even going to make it to the postseason? I don't think he's 100%. And they're having a lot of trouble running the ball. And we know the struggles they're having with the offensive line. With guys being hurt, is Donovan Smith going to be able to play this week? Ryan Jensen being on IR, losing Kappa. So there's a lot of issues going on with Brady and the offensive line. And we know that anything with Tom Brady now, you need a strong offensive line because at 45, man, yes, he's still cerebral. He's still got a great arm, but he needs protection because if any pocket collapses on him, the play's over. And that's how, even when Brady was in his late 20s, early 30s, and that dynasty with the Patriots, the way to beat Brady is to get pressure up the middle. And right now, the offensive line is not at 100%. So Buccaneers, they're a team to look out for at 2-1, but I think that season could easily start to get murky for them.
They're firmly in the grasp of being that NFC contender still. 100%. They deserve that respect, but they need to put together some better performances on offense. Russell Gage had 13 targets, 12 catches. That is good. You like that. He is actually a person they brought in this offseason that they expected something from. but you can't rely on him that much. Now, obviously, with Mike Evans back, it'll look different. We'll see if Cole Beasley can get a little frisky for them as that little slot guy. He seems to fit the mold of somebody who could just help Tom Brady move the chains. But obviously, he just showed up midweek and went to work. So, you're not expecting much from him from week one. So the Buccaneers as well fit kind of both molds there. And one last team here to segue into the teams that need saving, but also kind of save themselves. I'll shout out the Denver Broncos. And here's the only rub that I can think of that's a positive here for the Denver Broncos. Their game management and Nathaniel Hackett's ability to be a head coach in the NFL can't really get worse, Pat. That's how I'm looking at it right now. Like, he can't get much worse at what he's doing to manage these games and call timeouts. So. Yeah, right. You hope so. You never know, right? People have shocked us before. But if it gets a little bit better, this offense has talent left and right. They can run the ball pretty well. They got playmakers on the outside. Russell Wilson has not looked like himself, but he's still a very good quarterback. And they have to just get in the end zone. They were one of the best teams on a yard per play standpoint, on yards gained standpoint. They just, in the first 2 weeks, they couldn't find the end zone after all those red zone appearances. Like, that has to flip at some point, you'd assume, with Russell Wilson at the helm. So that's the rub on Denver. They saved themselves with an ugly win against San Francisco on Sunday night when they played. But, if you think there's a chance for them to get better, they're 2-1, and it's despicable and ugly, and there's no confidence running around this team right now. But if you're 2-1 playing bad football and you start playing better football, you imagine that that's going to allow them a chance to get in the playoffs. And you think about this AFC West, we thought they had a chance at 4 playoff teams. The Raiders are 0-3 now, and the Chargers lost a game, and they're not looking as sharp as we hoped they would coming into the season. I called them out last week for not being a shoo-in to the playoffs. So the Denver Broncos at 2-1 playing ugly football now open up a chance for them to figure it out and all of a sudden become a 10-11 win team.
Yeah, and then really quickly, Pete, if we want to finish here, if you have another team, hit on them after this. But a team that needs their season saved is a team that I was highest on more than anybody and more than any other team in the league. The Vegas Raiders desperately need their season saved. However, I am tripling down. I am tripling down on Josh McDaniels. I'm tripling down on Derek Carr. I don't know if I'm tripling down on this defense because that's where they need to get better. Defense in the run game, I mean, they are atrocious right now. They get blasted on the ground every single week right now. They were just getting torched left and right by Derrick Henry. It was really tough to watch them try to defend the run. And then they can't run themselves. This is a team where they need to have a balanced offense, even though they've added Devontae Adams. And I was so high on Adams, Renfro, and Waller with Carr thrown to them. You can't just be all throw and no run. You've got to get that run game going, with Josh Jacobs. And right now, this offensive line just isn't in sync in terms of pushing guys back and getting consistent chunk yardage. That, and they're terrible in the red zone. Carr had another unfortunate tip pass that was picked off in the end zone against Tennessee. But once again, the Titans, who maybe had their season saved, but I'm not sure they did because Vrabel, again, the way he managed that game in that second half was terrible. They went up big early, and they let Vegas back in it again the way they let the Giants back in it at home in week 1. Vegas should have came back and won that game. If not for that tip pass pick in the end zone, they'd probably come back and beat them. Tennessee, once again, gets totally shut out in the second half, lifeless on offense, just totally vanilla play calling after they looked so good in the first half. Tannehill, I don't know what the hell is going on with him. And from first half to second half, his throws just were not as sharp watching back through some of the highlights. And what I was seeing on Red Zone, I didn't even see Tennessee with the ball in the second half when I was watching Red Zone on Sunday. And then even the last drive, the Raiders do score a couple of fourth down, basically Hail Mary passes, one to Matt Collins, who then caught the touchdown. He had a huge game, Matt Collins. He is, a budding star on that team as well. Forget about Adams, Renfro, and Waller. Matt Collins had a huge performance. But then, if they get the 2-point conversion, that's a tie game, and they outscore them 14-0 in the second half. So, look, something's got to change with the Raiders in terms of their red zone production. 1, 2, they've got to be able to run the ball more consistently with Jacobs. And then 3, their defense, that secondary's got to step up, man. I said that was going to be the weakness this year. And I know they're a little bit banged up, especially at the corner position. But Rock Ya-Sin, Nate Hobbs, like those guys got to step up, man. Otherwise, this season is going to go off the rails, and they're not going to be able to save it. And I'm going to look like a buffoon saying they were going to win the AFC West.
It's a tough one. But listen, I respect the triple down. They're another team that has the talent. They're similar to the Broncos in that respect, except they haven't had the lucky wins. They also haven't had as easy of a schedule as the Broncos to this point. They haven't had that layup. They haven't had the get-right game. We thought maybe the Titans were going to be that game, but clearly the Titans are a professional football team, right? Like Mike Vrabel has shown now, he has a track record. There's a level of competition to expect from the Titans, and I missed on that one this week. And if you look at air yards, right, something people talk about a lot with quarterbacks, Derek Carr is pretty much where he needs to be, right? Like he's in the top half of air yards intended amongst quarterbacks right now. So it's not like he's not pushing the ball down the field. It's not like he's not taking shots. He has been, decently aggressive. I do agree that the play calling got vanilla with the lead, which is something that, where teams go to die and lose leads. So it's tough. I agree with you, though. I don't think it's that the Raiders are dead. They're not dead. They need to have that saving game coming up here. And who do they have in week 4? They have the Broncos. So, man, that's a tough game, right? They're in Vegas. It's a division rival.
That's their season, man.
That is their season, really. It really is. And they're 2.5-point favorites. And if you think about these two teams, you can really make an argument that the Raiders have played better football than the Denver Broncos, especially offensively, right? Defensively, the Broncos have been much better. That's definitely fair to say. But it's not like these teams are in different realms, yet the Broncos are 2-1 and the Raiders are 0-3. And just to round it up on the Chargers, because I mentioned them before we kind of started there, to talk specifically about how they need saving, they don't have explosives right now. Their only explosive guy, I should say this, their only 2 explosive guys are the guy Guyton, who is now out for the year, and it's Mike Williams, but Mike Williams isn't a burner. He's not getting open catches down the field very frequently. He's getting contested catches. It goes back to that Joe Burrow conversation where it's great to have Mike Williams. It's great to chuck him the ball and see what happens, but you have to create explosives here because Justin Herbert, on the flip side of Derek Carr here, should not be in the bottom 7 of intended air yards per pass attempt. No way in hell should Herbert be anywhere near the bottom of that list. You see what he does when he has to gain 10 yards on 3rd down, gain 9 yards on 4th down. He's electric. He does it constantly. He throws dimes through the defense. He doesn't even turn the ball over very much. This guy needs to be unleashed. This guy needs to be allowed to do so. The only thing that makes me nervous, they don't really have the weapons, especially with Keenan Allen being injured and banged up right now, to let him fly, to let Justin Herbert cook, to go in division and talk about Russell Wilson versus Herbert. This guy needs to be given the reins to make mistakes. Like, I'd almost rather Herbert throw a pick every game if he's going to be pushing the ball down the field, because it might mean 2 touchdowns more, one interception. And like, that's still positive for a guy like Herbert, because more often than not, when he's throwing the ball down the field, he's not throwing picks anyway. So let the man fly, let the man cook a little bit. I don't want to see him averaging 6.4 air yards per pass attempt halfway through the season and towards the end. That's not going to cut it for this team, especially as the defense, looks pedestrian. It looks average. They have playmakers who can make big plays, but they're not doing that particularly either. So you're going to need Herbert to make it happen for them. So those are the teams that saved themselves in week 3, and those are the teams that need saving moving forward, even if some of them have decent records to this point. Any last words there before we look at this slate here for week 4? No? All good? All right. Patrick Boyle. Pat Boyle 44, by the way. Just hosted overnight. Actually, let's do this real quick. Just hosted overnight on the Fan last night. And I've been thinking about this coming up to our episode here tonight, about how people like you and I, who are so exposed to certain pockets of the media and fans through callers at WFAN, through Twitter, and all the crap that we see, it's really easy to kind of look into a certain lens that may not be the truth, that may not be what most people are actually thinking. And I find it interesting working at a high school. I talk to some of these high school kids about their fantasy teams and about this thing and that thing, and they're seeing it. And I get reminded quickly, Pat, that what you and I think is the norm or what most people are thinking about a team is not always true. So we've been joking about the Giants kind of going 4-0 to start the season, but we never really we never thought that they were good. Mark Shanlubian called them a fraud the other day on the Pics podcast. He's correct. They are not a real 2-0 team. They're not a 4-0 team, even though they didn't make it there. What has been your takeaway now after the Cowboys loss, being on air for 5 hours at the Fan, of the general vibes around the New York Giants? Because it's real easy to say a week ago, oh, they're 2-0, the defense this, Daniel Jones doesn't suck, yada, yada. But we might be back very shortly to this team sucks. They can't score. Sterling Shepard out again. What's going on? What are you feeling right now about the New York Giants?
Yeah, I brought the hammer down on them, early Tuesday morning on the Fan. I said any chance of them making the playoffs, and which we thought going into the season was slim to none. It was nearly impossible. They built some hope into their fan base, and you thought, okay, they can beat the Cowboys at home against a backup quarterback, Cooper Rush. We knew how good the Dallas defense had played, but especially no Michael Gallup in that game on Monday night, no Dalton Schultz. CeeDee Lamb hadn't played well, and he dropped a wide open pass in the first half and then has the comeback second half of the season so far, especially with that highlight reel catch for the touchdown. But that was a winnable game for the Giants, and they let it slip through their hands. And the offensive line is yet again the biggest flaw of that team. I mean, outside of Andrew Thomas, every single guy on that line got blown up. The rookie right tackle, Evan Neal out of Alabama, was getting destroyed by Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence. Anybody that Dan Quinn and the Cowboys defense lined up against him, he was getting blown away, and especially in the interior too. I mean, they had to try to get so creative with Kafka and with Brian Daboll, the offense calling the plays. They were going play action screens, RPO, play action, dumping balls off just to get guys to get yards after the catch, because anytime they had a straight drop back, Daniel Jones was under pressure, running for his life immediately. He got pressured 24 times. Second most in a game in the NFL in the last 2 years, most this season, most in his career. I thought Daniel Jones had a great game. I wouldn't say great game. He had a good game considering the offensive line was terrible. He made a lot happen with his legs, running for 80 yards basically. But again, I think all the flaws that we have pointed out about Daniel Jones here, and especially now over the last year and a half, I've done the 180. I said there's no way it's ever going to work out for him as the quarterback here. Is because you have a quarterback that can elevate those flaws. And Daniel Jones put the team on his back, and it was a gutsy, heroic performance, but there was still multiple plays where he's locking onto his number one target, and the number two and number three guys are open, for 7, 8, 9, 10 yards. And it's just, he didn't get a lot of help at all from the offensive line. He didn't get a lot of help with Kenny Golladay once again dropping another pass after he ran his mouth all week. Didn't get help from Sterling Shepard, and then Shep blows out his knee on the final play from the stupid shit MetLife turf, at that stadium. That place should be burned down to the ground. Like my friend Bobby Skinner from Talking Giants says, jokes about, kind of doesn't joke about. But that was a winnable game for the Giants. They left points on the board, and the offensive line, unless it improves, they're once again going to be an offense that is at the bottom of the league. They're not going to be able to generate enough yards through the air because Jones has no time to throw the ball, and it's just they're going to have a ton of games this year that are exactly like their first 3 weeks. Where if they can win at the margins and they can lose at the margins, I think the big thing is they are much more well coached this year, but they're not a team that is going anywhere anytime soon. And I think if not for the softest schedule in the league, they would probably be at that 4 or 5 win mark. But, we'll see. Those are all going to be toss-ups for them in that 4-week span where they play, Detroit, Jacksonville, Houston, and Seattle. So, we'll see. But if the offensive line doesn't improve, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's the offensive line 100%. Like you said, Daniel Jones didn't look terrible. It was what's the guy supposed to do? Even on some of the plays he made down the field, they weren't converted. Right. And we're talking about Herbert and Carr's average air yards. Daniel Jones is third lowest in the NFL, but that makes sense right now. And Daniel Jones isn't a bad deep passer. He's not bad at that, but he's averaging 6.2 yards in the air, intended air yards right now. That's almost what you expect when you can't block for the man. What's he supposed to do? He's getting creamed back there. He's not the most cerebral guy in the pocket, even though he's pretty athletic. And it's just tough to watch sometimes. Do you expect Neal to hold down Parsons and Lawrence? Like, no, but that's what you're facing in the NFL a lot of these times. And yeah, the Dallas Cowboys D-line might be a little extra special than some other teams, but that's got to get figured out. And then lastly, on the Giants, they're giving up 5.3 yards per carry right now, and that's fifth worst in the NFL. That's got to change. Tony Pollard, it just felt like every time he touched the rock, it was a first down, and he was slashing right through that defense. When Ezekiel Elliott came in the game, it was like, yes, let's go. We might actually only hold it to 3 yards right now, and that's not a place where you want to be when Tony Pollard is running all over you. So Giants, they are who we thought they were, pretty much.
And on the flip side, Saquon Barkley has been unbelievable. His resurgence is for real. You said it, after week 1, he might be back. After week 2, he's sure back. And he proved it again. He's their best weapon right now. But that's a concern. I don't think many people can stay healthy, let alone a guy like Saquon Barkley that has had injury problems in the past. If they have to give him the ball 25 times a game just for the offense to have any kind of life, they're going to run him into the ground. But he has been unbelievable so far for them this year. If not for him, their offense would be even worse. And then, giving up all those yards on the ground, I don't know what the hell is going on with Joe Shane. I know he's got to cut a lot of salary, but there was no reason why they had to get rid of Blake Martinez, him and Wink Martindale, because apparently he didn't fit in with the blitz-heavy scheme. I mean, you're telling me that Tay Crowder and Austin Calitro are going to be your starting middle linebackers? Those guys are terrible. They couldn't wrap up Tony Pollard to save their lives on Monday night. And that was a big reason why anytime Dallas needed any kind of yardage, just hand the ball off up the middle. Giants' interior pass rush and run rush wasn't getting anything. They missed Leonard Williams big time, who missed, I think it was his first game in his career on Monday night. And then your linebackers just aren't good enough to make tackles at the point of contact. So, big problem there as well.
So the all 4-0 Giants hype that was going around is dead.
I wouldn't be surprised they lose. I wouldn't be surprised they lose to Chicago again on Sunday. As much problems as they're having with even completing a pass right now.
Man, listen, the Bears don't want to pass the ball anyway, so Khalil Herbert might run for 160 again. The Giants, it might happen again. It might. So let's do that now. Let's do our little week 4 preview here, where we just call out a couple games that we find interesting that we might want to put some money on Thursday night into Friday and the weekend. So, Pat, why don't you kick us off? And why don't you kick us off actually with that Thursday night game? You already mentioned it before, but if you want to start there, just so we can click that one away and talk about a game that should be pretty damn exciting with Dolphins at 3-0, Bengals at 1-2 needing a win.
Yeah, I don't know how optimistic or pessimistic we should be about Tua playing. Again, I think the biggest thing is there's some internal proceedings going on with making sure he doesn't have a concussion. They're trying to say it's his back. They're trying to say it's his ankle. I don't buy it. I think if anything, it's either he has a concussion or he doesn't. So if he's fine there, he's going to play. I know they've got the questionable tag on Jalen Waddle at practice on Tuesday. I think he's totally fine. I think basically most guys on that offense are fine. Maybe Teron Armstead, the left tackle, is a guy to look out for if he's going to play. But for the most part, I think it's just fatigue, playing in the 100-degree heat on Sunday, defense being on the field for 90 snaps. I think they are going to be gassed. I think you're going to see that in the second half. Maybe it's close in the first half. But if you're looking for a way to bet this, if you don't want to take Cincinnati right now, the spread's at 4, I think, on DraftKings. If you don't like that to start, maybe you hope that this game's tight in the first half and then you live bet the Bengals at the half. But I'm going to be on the Bengals every which way in this game. I think he's due for a huge game. I think Jamar Chase finally has that. So I like Burrow to chase this on Thursday. I think the Bengals offense continues to break out, and I love the Bengals in this one. I think Mike McDaniel has looked great so far. Tua's been pretty damn good, man. I mean, again, he has shut me up so far, but I think they are due for a big regression here on Thursday night on the road in the short week after that exhausting thriller that they won on Sunday at home.
Big time letdown spot. And it's not the typical letdown spot where it's a bad team, right? And I'm not talking about the actual result prediction here. I'm just talking about from an energy perspective, from a health perspective. There's almost no chance the Dolphins are going to be at the same force they were on Sunday against Buffalo going to Cincinnati now. So I'm with you. The lean feels like the Bengals. And honestly, I'm thinking about putting this one in early, like maybe getting the Bengals now at 4, because I could see a world where Tua doesn't play for whatever reason, and all of a sudden that spread is 6.5, 7, 7.5. And, then you can figure it out Thursday night if you want to change that up. But for now, you might win on the good number if Tua ends up being banged up.
And I think if Tua plays, like this maybe gets back to 3. I don't see it going to 2.5.
Yeah, I think 3.5, 3 maybe tops.
So I don't think you're going to miss out on really anything if you bet it now. But yeah, if Tua does get ruled out, that's going to skyrocket up to 7, 7.5. Because when Teddy Bridgewater had to come in that game for a brief stint, they were terrible on offense.
Yeah, it's just not the same. And that says something about Tua and his progressions that he's made as a quarterback. All right, I'll move on to my game that I want to talk about here. It is actually the London game. So London games are a little bit weird, but I am interested in what's going on here. What, did you forget that there was a London game?
No, I just knew you were going to talk about the Vikings.
Yeah, of course. I had to talk about the Vikings because I was actually with a Vikings fan during my men's league basketball game earlier, and I'm like, bro, what's going on with the Vikings? Like, what's happening here? He's like, what do you mean we're 2-1? I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't feel right. And what he said to me was so perfect. He's like, we're talking about the Vikings, and Kirk Cousins is our quarterback. It never feels right. Right. And it's a great point. And it's part of why I am so infatuated with this team, for better or worse, is because there's moments in time where you're like, this team is so damn good. They're balanced on offense. Dalvin Cook probably won't play. He might play, I think, on Sunday. That doesn't even matter. Madison's one of the better backups in the league. So, it's like nothing ever feels right for the Vikings. Why should it? I think it should. I think they're a better team than the Saints. They're 2.5-point favorites here. The offense is better. The defense is better. I don't understand why they can't put it together. To me, it's hard to believe it's all Kirk Cousins. Something else goes on with the Vikings, and perhaps my Vikings fan friend just broke it down. It's the Vikings. It never feels right. So I don't know if it's something that can change, per se, with Kirk Cousins at the helm and the Vikings being the Vikings, but they're talented enough to win games and look better than they have, despite that incredible comeback on Sunday against the Lions. They're 2-1. They're fine. They're in line to be right there for a playoff spot when the time comes. But I'm just interested to see how they show up. And on the flip side, I'm interested to see if the Saints are able to figure anything out. They're gaining all these yards. They're not scoring a lot of points. And the defense is not the defense that we were used to for the past couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think, we look at the other games in the 1 o'clock window. Obviously, Bills, Ravens in Baltimore, 1 o'clock. Right now, Buffalo 3-point favorite, over under 52. Oh man, we talk about Miami's going to be gassed after the short week, or going into the short week. But I think even though Buffalo's got a full 7 days, it's going to be exciting to see how they bounce back. Mentally, you think they're going to be out for blood, right? A game that they probably should have won. But mentally, I wonder how physically, I wonder how they're going to bounce back, even though they do have a full week. You saw Diggs ran out of gas at the end of that game. He was basically laying down on the sideline with the cramping, a bunch of guys dealing with that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back. They missed Ed Oliver. He should be back. I know he was questionable in practice on Tuesday. We got a long way to go to see how he plays. But again, Micah Hyde, done for the year. Jordan Poyer, is he going to come back and play here this week? We'll see if that happens. They're basically missing their entire secondary. They still are not getting Tre'Davious White back for another couple of weeks. Dane Jackson, who had that scary injury, he possibly could play on Sunday. But there's a lot of question marks on this defense right now, and also on the offensive line. Mitch Morse, does he come back and play? And I know their right guard, Ryan Bates, had a questionable tag on him so far earlier in the week in practice as well. And then, we know that right now, if Baltimore can get that Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews MVP connection going, they're scary. And even though the offense, again, doesn't jump out on you on paper, if Ronnie Stanley, their left tackle, is back this week, we saw them have a lot of success running the ball. We'll see what J.K. Dobbins can do. But, excuse me, I think, Rashad Bateman has kind of done really, really well so far, answering those questions of can he be the number one guy. Weeks 1 and 3, 2 catches for 59 yards exactly each. He had the big game against Miami. He does have 2 touchdowns. They don't really go to him a lot. I don't think he has a single target in the red zone yet. But, in terms of setting up the offense, getting down the field, it's Bateman. And then, Mark Andrews is the big weapon in the red zone, and Lamar's a threat to run at any time. So I would expect a lot of points in this one because of all the question marks that Buffalo has on defense. Plus, Baltimore secondary, I don't think they're there yet still. But, man, it's going to be exciting to watch Allen and Lamar duel it out on Sunday for 4 quarters.
For as banged up as the Bills defensive backfield is the Ravens are giving it up right now, right? Like they're giving up so many yards. I mentioned the Cardinals before, giving up the most yards per play in the league. The Ravens are second. They're giving up 6.5 yards per play. That's pretty bad, right? So you think about that combination of the Bills offense coming out for blood, not being able to punch it in to the end zone a couple times in that Dolphins game. That combined with the Ravens giving it up on defense, combined with the Bills defense being all sorts of banged up, it feels like points, Pat. And then all of a sudden, we bet a bunch of overs and it's going to be a freaking stupid 21-17 game for no reason at all. But that's the perfect analysis to what to expect on Sunday. And that's a game I am just staying far away from on the betting standpoint because I don't know what's going to happen. Lamar can easily continue to put up 30 points a game. Josh Allen can stand right next to him and do the same damn thing. So I don't know what the hell to expect here. But if I'm not locked into that, I'm doing my Sunday wrong.
Yeah, and I think what saved Baltimore on Sunday and what has saved them a lot in this season too is they were able to get turnovers, right? They've got the second best turnover differential at +5. They've got 8 takeaways so far in 3 games. Is that something that's going to stand up against the Bills, who Josh Allen protects the ball really well? It's going to be late. It's going to remain to be seen. But if they're not getting takeaways against the Bills, they are going to continue to give up chunk yardage. They are going to continue to give up a ton of points. So if I'm leaning one way, this I think is a good spot for a teaser. This I think where, I could see Ravens winning this game, spreads at 3. I'd get the Bills, down to 3.5, tease the over up to like 44. Talked about getting away from the same game teaser, but I think that's a great spot for it where I'm back in the Bills and I think there's going to be I'm very confident there's going to be points in this one.
Pat is the same game teasers as Pete is to the Vikings.
Can't get away from them.
Can't get away. Can't quit them. Can't get away at all. That'll be a good game. I can't freaking wait for that one. Quickly, we already mentioned the Cardinals Panthers, but I'm just interested to see how that one breaks down. The Cardinals still have Kyler Murray, who still makes awesome plays sometimes, but there just seems to be no consistency. A lot of people say it's schoolyard BS every down with the Cardinals, and sometimes it looks great, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know what's going to happen with the Cardinals. The Panthers being favored is really interesting to me. I don't want to harp on that because we already mentioned it. But lastly, I will just mention that on Monday night, you can throw another one on Sunday if you want, but on Monday night, it's Rams 49ers. The Rams are underdogs here. Yeah, Kyle Shanahan's had McVay's number for the most part. Niners -2.5. Are they going to run the ball down the Rams' throat and do the Shanahan thing? That seems to be the expectation from Vegas, giving the Niners the 2.5 here. But I was really uninspired by what we saw from the 49ers last week against the Broncos. And the Broncos defense is good. I don't know. I'm just interested for that one. I'm looking forward to Monday night. I'll probably look to maybe tease the Rams up to 8.5, right? Because you get the Rams at 8.5 there. That's a real cushion. You get through the 3, through the 7, and I like that. But when I saw that number, I thought it would be a pick 'em at lowest. I thought maybe the Rams would still be, 1.5, 2-point favorites. So I was just interested by that number here. And I'm interested to see what happens with Jimmy G back at the helm, second full week now as the quarterback. Does this offense start to figure it out? Like, can they move the ball outside of Jeff Wilson breaking big ones and doing that whole thing? So I'm interested to see what goes down Rams-Niners.
Yeah, just really quickly on the one, if I'm leaning one way, it's going to be the Rams. And I think it's because, Jeff Wilson, we know that, that's a lot of nameless running backs, but Elijah Mitchell is a better running back than Jeff Wilson. And the fact that, you have Jeff Wilson running the ball, we'll see how involved they get Debo into the run game. Again, I don't think that's a given that Debo is going to continue to run the ball 5, 6, 7, 8 times every single week just because they need him to, right? That was a huge disparity, a huge argument in his contract this year. And so far, he's ran the ball 17 times through 3 weeks. So an average of, 6 carries a game. But the last week against Denver, they ran it with him 5 times for 6 yards. Denver knew it was coming. We know the Rams know it's coming. Can they stop it? I think the fact that you've got Jeff Wilson running the ball rather than Eli Mitchell. And then the big thing, Pete, best probably all-around player in football and far and away the best offensive lineman, the left tackle Trent Williams, is out Monday night already. He is done. He's got an injury. That is a gigantic blow to the 49ers offense, the ability to move the ball, protecting Jimmy G's backside against that Rams pass rush. That's going to be trouble. And I think there's not a lot of players in the league, skill-wise, skill players that you could say this guy makes or breaks a game. Trent Williams is the left tackle, can make or break the 49ers' offensive chances. If I'm leaning one way, it's going to be the Rams on Monday night. And then just like everybody else, we'll see. It's up in the air right now with Hurricane Ian, but we'll see if the Chiefs and Bucks play in Tampa, if they move that game. But either way, Sunday night, we talked about the Bucks kind of being in limbo with how their offense looks. The Chiefs coming off that letdown loss against the Colts. Cannot wait to see Brady and Mahomes dueled out once again. I think that game is going to be excellent. That spread right now, you're looking at Kansas City 2-point favorites on the road over under a 45. So once again, not expected to be a big high-scoring battle. I think Mike Evans coming back for Tampa, coming off that loss, is going to be huge for them. And then, with the Chiefs, again, coming off the loss, I think, again, if who's going to be their kicker? Who has they signed? Did they sign a new kicker yet so far?
I hope so. Shen Lugan hopes so.
Exactly. I mean, that's honestly, dude, like they missed an extra point. They missed a field goal. They faked a field goal because they didn't believe in Amendola. So I think right now it's going to be, I know they signed Matthew Wright to the practice squad, but I have no idea what the hell they're doing right now for their kicker option, because I think Butker.
I thought you were going to say, I have no idea who that is.
I don't know I don't know who Matt Wright is, but I don't know if Butker doesn't play again. I think, again, their special teams, the ability to get 3 points, if they stall in the red zone, especially how good Tampa Bay's defense has been, that's a game probably that I stay away from Sunday night, but exciting to watch.
Yeah, I'm looking at these primetime games, and I'm going to include the CBS game of the week at 4:25, the Broncos and Raiders. That's a 2.5-point spread. The Chiefs Bucks is a 2-point spread. Niners Rams 2.5-point spread. When I see 2, Pat, that's where I look for teasers, because you get the underdog from 2 to 8. That's the game winner right there on teaser fronts. So I'm thinking, like, you take the Broncos from plus 2.5 to plus 8.5. The Raiders have given no sense of confidence to beat a team by more than a touchdown to this point. I mean, they're 0-3, obviously, but even still in this division game, you feel really good about 8.5 there. And then whether it's the Bucks up to plus 8, which I also love with their defense and that being a tight game just because of the pedigree of both of those teams, or you get the Rams up to plus 8.5. I mean, that could be a beautiful thing there to take 2 of those games that you feel best about, because in reality, there's a real chance for all of those underdogs to win that game outright. So that's where I'm looking from the teaser perspective. Broncos plus 8.5, Rams plus 8.5, or you throw the Bucks plus 8 in there. Obviously, you're going to kind of wait to see where that game's going to be played, how the spread's going to move. But yeah, those are some really interesting numbers there to try to sneak it past the 3 and 7 on the teaser front.
I agree, man. But yeah, if my leans real quick, Cincinnati for Thursday night. But when we do our picks, I'm gonna give you some leans here right now. I told you I'm leaning the Bills, maybe for the teaser. We're going to see what's going to happen if Zach Wilson's going to play for the Jets in his debut on Sunday. But either way, that's probably a game I stay away from in terms of the lean.
Trubisky versus Flacco, Trubisky versus Wilson. What are we doing?
I'm definitely going to find a way, if Brian Hoyer's playing quarterback for the Patriots, I'm definitely going to find a way to get the Packers down to probably 5.5 and parlay them with something. Like I said, I'm leaning the Rams on Monday night. I'm probably going to lean for the Bears, on the road against the Giants, maybe get them up to 7.5 and get the under going there. That's another one where you can't, you rationally can't explain how there's going to be points in that one. And then Browns Falcons is another good spot for maybe a Browns, get them up to like plus 3.5. If you think maybe they're, you don't trust them as a 1.5 point favorite, as basically a pick 'em. But you don't think the Falcons are a team that can blow people out, especially with how good the Browns running game is.
The sad part is that the only way to rationally expect 45 plus points in the Bears-Giants game is for their quarterbacks to throw pick sixes or big time turnovers. And, it's sad, but that's actually true and actually possible for that to be the reason why either of these teams score more than 20 points. Like, that's the only way. It's the only way. Oh, my God. All right, Pat, that was great stuff as always. Previewing week 4. Recapping week 3 as we do. We talked about our teams that saved themselves in week 3, teams that need saving, and now we're ready for week 4, baby. Another week in the books. It's what we do. We're out here every single week. Picks coming on Friday. Should be another good week for the boys, hopefully. Pat, any last words, any plugs?
No plugs, man. Just hit me up on Twitter at PatBoyle44. I'll be doing some updates this weekend at the Fan and CBS. So listen to me for the top of the hour on the Fan, bottom of the hour on CBS, and keep listening to my boy Peter Kennedy here on Subway Sports Talk. Shout out DraftKings. Shout out your fellas at Raycon. Right?
Oh, hell yeah. Why not? Yeah.
So you do a great job as always, man. The graphics, getting the picks out, making them easy to follow, making them easy to keep up with, seeing how we're doing. You're killing it, brother. So keep it up.
Yeah, and hopefully this week I'll pick some winners for us to post the videos.
The picks came around. We want to combine 9 and 6 this week all total.
Yeah.
I got to pick up the slack individually, but I think I'll let you know which pick is my favorite, so you can post a video of it.
Yeah, that's right. I screwed myself over as well, so maybe we'll do a better job with that this week. But yeah, that's it. That's all we got. Thank you for listening as always. Shout out to Raycon, shout out to DraftKings, as Pat said. But that's Subway Sports Talk, y'all. Pete Kennedy, Pat Boyle. Thanks for listening. As always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, review on your podcast app, and subscribe to the notification bell on YouTube. Don't be afraid to leave a comment on YouTube as well. Helps us out a ton, as well as at Subway Sports Talk on all the social medias. Give us a follow, give us some shout outs, give us some comments. We appreciate all that stuff and helps us grow this thing. That's what we're trying to do. So appreciate y'all. Have a great week. We'll talk to you in a couple days with some NFL picks. Cheers.